Okay, good. Let's start. Last week there was issue in terms of the waiting room. Last week I had automatic allow people to join, but there were a few students complaining that they could not join. So this week I've turned off the automatic admit. So we'll get some interruption during the class. So apologize for that. But if I turn on the automatic admit, other students might have problem joining. So apologize for that in advance. Okay, let's start. Just a few announcements first. Just before the mid-class break, I will post the link to the individual registration form to the chat, the in-call chat messaging. So you can just click on the link. It should open up a spreadsheet. This particular spreadsheet where you can register your topic. Let me just allow a few people to enter. Where you're allowed to enter your registration topic, for example, eBiz Hub. You can add comments, but that is optional. Your name, student ID, and so on. Yeah, it will be first come, first served basis. The class vote will happen afterward, so we can ignore this for now. So you can do your registration during break. Yeah, so just to avoid interrupting the class itself. I will make that available just before the 15 minutes break, so you can do your registration during break. Separate to that, what else? Let me just quickly check. For those who are still looking for, not those, but groups which are looking for ideas in terms of businesses to do your eBiz assignment, I sent quite a few links. Hopefully you'll find it helpful to give you ideas on what kind of business which you want to look into. So you have things like these YouTube links allow you to give some ideas in terms of social impact or environment, or some food for thoughts in terms of businesses. Separate to that, you can go on to the business plan library. There's plenty of real world business plan available. It isn't the most up to date. I haven't got around to updating to the latest business plan yet. I think it's gone up to book number 32. Currently, the number of books is gone, or chapters has gone up to 47, if I believe. So when I have time, I'll update it to the remaining 10 or 15 extra books on top of that. Separate to that, if you are looking for ideas in terms of practical ideas, you can go on to the manufacturing video libraries. There you can access quite a lot of different videos on how things are made or how things are manufactured. Yeah, so if you're still looking for ideas, you're welcome to access the manufacturing video libraries. Or if you are interested in agricultural and food productions and so on, you can access the library in the modern agricultural and food production video library at this YouTube link. There's plenty of ideas in terms of businesses which you can obtain. So in general, in this course, you should not be lacking in terms of ideas to start a business. Plenty of materials to work on. Okay, last week we talked about entrepreneurships or startups and Vietnamese culture, how Vietnamese culture different to other country. So we looked at the example, how it's differ from US and Thailand, and how these differences will affect entrepreneur as well as startup among the Vietnamese startups and entrepreneurs. You can access the Hofstede link here to find the six-dimensional culture for other countries, as well as watch the YouTube video link here to explain to you what are the six cultural dimensions, such as power, distance, individualism, and collectivism, masculinity and femininity, uncertainty, avoidance, long-term and short-term indulgence, and restraint, and how each of these kind of different country tends to have different scores. And the scores in general will persist among the various different countries. These things doesn't change in short term. Yeah, it might change a little bit in long term. Cultural and country in general tends to be static. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. So Vietnamese culture, which we kind of cover quite a lot already with the Hofstede six-dimensional culture. There was some research done by Dr. Michael Ingwen, who used to be a dean of the business school or the school business at IU. And she did a lot of research on entrepreneurs or entrepreneurships and Vietnamese culture. And what she found out by interviewing not only students at the IU, but entrepreneurs around Ho Chi Minh City, cultures which are highly influenced for entrepreneurs and so on. So things like entrepreneurs or entrepreneurships favor qualification. So at least in Vietnam, so you need university degree or postgrad degree and so on. It helps apparently. It takes a lot of parental influence, very similar to what we kind of seen from the GEM, the Global Entrepreneur Monitor. Parental as well as friends and family influences or advice or capital and so on are very, very important. So that's not much different from what the GME has found. We kind of looked at the Hofstede six cultural dimension, and we noticed that high power distance is quite high in Vietnam as well. So as entrepreneurs and so on, being in a country with high power distance can be a good effect on entrepreneur. Also nationalism as well. We kind of discussed the difference between US and Vietnam in terms of individualism and collectivism. Vietnam is a kind of a collectivism kind of culture. But nowadays, since the startup nation and so on, and last week we kind of covered that if, in general, individualism is good for entrepreneurship because being independent can be very effective. And we'll see that in general, most successful entrepreneurs are either the only child of the family or the eldest child of the family, because the only or the eldest child tends to be independent. They don't have siblings to depend on. in general, other people depend on them. So it's good training overall. But collectivism is not necessarily bad for entrepreneurship, especially.
Thầy ơi, có một bạn đang request vào lớp nhưng mà không có được thầy admit đó thầy.
I don't see admit here.
Dạ, tại bạn kia đó kêu là có request vào lớp rồi nhưng mà không thấy vào được hay sao?
Just ask them to exit and enter again, because if I cannot see the admit button, how can I admit them?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we're talking about individualism. It's not necessarily a bad thing, and what research I have found is that in country which are individualistic kind of country, but if the central authority or government basically influence and basically direct the country or the individualism to do entrepreneurships, then they will be successful at entrepreneurship. But if the governments or central authority don't do anything, then it's bad for entrepreneurship. So Vietnam is in that very good situation where not only it's a individualism country or high individualism, but the central authority also encourage entrepreneurships and startups and so on. So together you need these two components if you are a individualism kind of country. Other strength when it comes to entrepreneurs doing business rely on relationship. That is very, very important, especially in Vietnam. In Western culture, such as Europe, in a lot of the Western European country and the US, it's less so reliant on relationship overall. But at least in Asia as such, relationship and network is very, very important. What Win Mai also found is respectful businessmen is very strong in Vietnam, as well as stressing filial piety, which is family and so on, which part of the Confucius culture anyway is strong in Vietnam as well, which we already know. In Vietnam is Confucius kind of society, so hence stressing filial piety is quite high. That we already know already. But then also there's a strong herding effect, and hence Vietnam is a collectivism. You know, so we kind of know that from the Hofstede's sixth dimension already. So those are the strengths down here, or the high bars, and the weaknesses in Vietnam and so on are the spiritualism, femininity, low uncertainty avoidance, savings, collectivisms, which we already kind of discussed already with the Hofstede sixth dimension. Separate to culture and so on, and we kind of seen through the GEM, the global entrepreneur monitors and so on, that most country in general tends to have more male or men who are entrepreneur than female who are entrepreneur. It's not necessary that men are better than women when it comes to startups and entrepreneur. That's not true. In general, women or female in general tends to be as good as, or maybe even better than most men in entrepreneurs and startups. But in general, throughout research and so on, we tend to see more men starting businesses compared to women. Although in Vietnam, that recently has changed. In 2017, 2018, more women started businesses than men. The main reason why, and a lot of research has found out, main reason why is in general, from the young age, as early as high school and so on, it's the culture as well as the schools and their friends and their family tends to not encourage female or women when it comes to starting businesses and so on. So hence, women or female in general tends to be less interested because there's less encouragement as early as their early age or their high school age itself. So as early as high school, women are less interested than men in having or even owning their own business. So in general, a lot of countries try to resolve that. Yeah, it is a big problem. Don't forget that in every economy, 50% of the population are women. So in any way, if you can influence more women to start businesses, that's an extra 50% of the population who can potentially start businesses on top of that. Yeah, so it is a big problem. Yeah, because it's 50% of the whole economy. So in general, a lot of countries have recognized the weaknesses in their economy or in their culture. I mean, this research here in this particular slide is from US itself. But in Vietnam, in most years, we tend to see more men than women who start business anyhow. And a lot of it is from culture, media, and so on, or the internet and TV and so on, which influence more in terms of men owning their own business and so on than women and so on. So there is a gap. The gap can be a big problem because 50% of the population are women, or almost 50%. So the solution lies in the gender gaps is getting women and girls and female to be more interested in owning business while they are young, as well as while they're in high school. So we get started early and so on, more women will, more men even, than it currently is in Vietnam, want to start their own business, and that could help the economy tremendously, especially, like I said, 50%, almost 50% of the population are women. So if any way which we can increase the number of women and girls to start their own business, that's an extra 50% of the number of startups potentially can be added to the economy as well. Okay, so that's the end of the entrepreneur and culture. We'll move on to a different topic now. In general, midterm exam is going to be multiple choice, typically 1 hour, maybe around 30 to 40 multiple choice question overall. So hence we need to cover some theory and so on. And we'll move away from the practical and the mixing of media and so on, and focus more on theories and so on. So at least we can do some multiple choice with these things. Okay, before we start, we will talk about a few myths among entrepreneurships. Yeah. So some of these misunderstanding or myths in what entrepreneurs is all about. So entrepreneurs are doers and not thinkers. Kind of partial truth there. I mean, the secret to entrepreneurships or startups and so on is you need to do something. If you don't do anything, nothing will happen. So entrepreneurs are doer. But like this course itself, you have to do business plan. You have to do a lot of thinking, basically. You have to do the clean tech assignment, you have to do the individual assignment, and so on. There's a lot of analysis, a lot of thinking needs to be done. So entrepreneurs are both doers and thinkers as well, not one and not the other. Yeah, they are both doers and thinkers. So entrepreneurs are born, not made. This is untrue. Because if this is true, there's no point to this course. Yeah. So if they're only born and cannot be taught or made into entrepreneurs, then there's no point of having this course on entrepreneurship. So that I can never teach you either you're born to be an entrepreneur because you cannot be taught to be an entrepreneur. So this is also a myth. It's true that certain people, especially, I mean, what we kind of mentioned earlier, single child in a family or eldest child in a family. So you're born to be the single child, or you're born to be the eldest child, just to timing and so on, make you independent. It's good to be independent, and other people relying on you and you not relying on other people, because that's what a typical entrepreneur will face in real life. And it's good to be born to be a risk taker, as well as has other other characters which helps among entrepreneurs, which we kind of discussed already. But you can be taught to do these things as well. There are exceptions, like there are exceptions to most things. We talked about entrepreneurs and so on being the only child and the single child, or the eldest child of the family in general. But there are many examples where it's not necessarily the oldest or the only child of the family which are entrepreneurs. So in general, what research have found is that entrepreneurs can be taught or made as well, as long as they know their weaknesses and their strength when it comes to entrepreneurs. So hence, this is a myth. Yeah, entrepreneurs are born as well as can be taught or can be made as well. Entrepreneurs are always inventors. That's untrue. We kind of cover the definition of entrepreneurs. It doesn't have to be something unique or different. It can be something which already in existence, but better, or made from a different raw material or resources, or a better in terms of business process, or something more efficient in terms of manufacturing, or efficient in terms of business as well. So it doesn't have to be unique. Yeah? Entrepreneurs doesn't have to be inventors. Yeah? They can be adapters. Yeah? They can adapt, or they can be business process improvement of some sort. Entrepreneurs are academic and social misfit. That's untrue. In general, academic is a very, very bad character to have when it comes to entrepreneurs. Academic in general tends to make bad entrepreneurs. So in general, this is relatively untrue. Entrepreneurs doesn't have to be academic. You don't have to have a university degree to be a good entrepreneur. And we kind of seen this throughout history, from Mark Zuckerberg to Bill Gates to Richard Branson to Paul Duck from Hong An Gai Lai. None of them have university degree and so on. They're not necessarily academic, but they are some of the most successful people or entrepreneurs in society. Entrepreneurs are social misfit, not necessary. A lot of these characters, which we kind of see, especially with Richard Branson and so on, they're in the media constantly, and a lot of entrepreneurs or successful entrepreneurs are constantly in the media as well. There's a few social misfit, but there's not common, not necessarily common among entrepreneurs or successful entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs must fit the entrepreneurial profile. That's untrue as well. We kind of seen up here where entrepreneurs are, the statement where entrepreneurs are born, not made. We kind of discussed that already. Yeah. Yes, it's good to have certain characters, and you can be a good entrepreneur with these characters such as risk-taking or individualistic or inventors and so on. These are very good profile or good characters, but people without these kind of profile can make also good entrepreneurs as well. As long as they know their weaknesses and their strength, they push on their weaknesses and improve. They push on their strength, improve on their strength, and improve on their weaknesses and work on their weaknesses. All entrepreneur need is money. It's good to have money when it comes to startup and so on. But eventually you can always, doesn't matter how much money you have, unless you have infinite money, you're gonna run out eventually. So profitability and so on will make the business successful, because profit will go back into the business itself. It's like the blood in a functioning body. Without the profit feedback into the business itself, you're going to run out of money eventually. So all entrepreneur need is luck. True luck to everything is important, but in general, we're all human and so on. The thing is that we can make our own luck by optimizing, improving on our knowledge, reducing the risks in any way which we can figure out, fixing our problems and so on. We can make our own luck. Yeah, not everyone are lucky, but everyone can make their own luck by taking the a well-planned kind of route when it comes to entrepreneurships. Ignorance is bliss for entrepreneurs. Kind of very true. I mean, these things are these last three myths kind of have a lot of truth in them. It's true, but no one has infinite amount of money. And it's true that all you need is luck, but not everyone are lucky. And it's also true that ignorance is bliss, especially for entrepreneurs, because you need to have very thick skin. But not everyone are ignorant anyway. Yeah, and starting a business and so on, you need to be at least a thinker, not someone which are ignorant when it comes to business. So these 6, 7, 8 are partial truth, but in real world, it's unlikely to find someone which has infinite amount of money or infinite amount of luck, or totally stupid when it comes to business. These things in real world does not happen. Main reason why ignorant or is good for entrepreneurs, because for every good ideas, successful ideas, there'll be 10 or 20 people telling you it is a bad idea. So being ignorant of other people can be a good thing, and you can push your ideas or your business all the way through to the end or success. Entrepreneurs seek success, but experience high failure rate. That's true. Partial truth, to be exact. Everyone tries to seek success, but in general tends to be very high failure rates. But those are the inexperience. Yeah. Entrepreneurs from the Bill Gates to Mark Zuckerberg and so on have failed. Yeah. They have failed when they first started. It takes quite a few failures before you gain some experience. But when you gain experience, you get this kind of golden touch in the sense that from your experience, starting a business become easier and easier, and the failure rates will reduce. You kind of seen this in or will be seeing it in your clean tech assignment. When you're inexperienced, before you even try to start clean tech assignment, your failure rates will be very high. You're gonna experience a lot of bankruptcy and so on overall. But after 10 tries at a clean tech assignment, or maybe 20 or 30, the more you try, this failure rate will decrease overall. And it is the same experience among real world entrepreneurs as well. The first few times they try something, they fail. But the difference between entrepreneurs and other people is the entrepreneur do not give up. Yeah, they will try again. And that's the main difference between entrepreneurs. Anything, when you first try, chance or every single game which you first attempt, because of low experience and so on, failure rates will be very high. But if you're an entrepreneur, you try and try again, eventually these high failure rates will drop, and chance of success is a lot higher in general overall. Entrepreneurs are extreme risk taker, or basically gambler. That's relatively untrue. In general, especially in this course as well, entrepreneurships, all we talk about when it comes to risk, yes, risks appear in entrepreneurship's kind of definition and so on, but not the word risk by itself. Yeah, we talk about calculated risks. Yeah, so these are pre-calculated risks. We are not taking on risks as in gambling when it comes to entrepreneurship. We are taking on a calculated risk. Yeah, the two definitions of the two words are different. Risk on its own are basically gambling. Calculated risk means we already calculated the risk itself, and we know that we can take on this risk because it's by calculation, we know how big that risk is going to be. Yeah. So pros and cons is the risk versus the potential gain. Yeah. Calculate risk means that we look at both sides of the equation. How much gain we are taking on, given how much risk. Yeah. Is the risk worth taking on? And that's what the word calculated risk means. Yeah. So there is a slight difference. It's not extreme risk which entrepreneurs take on. It is calculated risk. Yeah, here the myth says that entrepreneurs are extreme risk taker, but not necessarily. Good entrepreneur or successful entrepreneur only take on calculated risks. Yeah, not any risk for risk's sake. Okay. We'll move on to the different entrepreneurial school of thoughts. Yeah, that in general there are two main school of thoughts: the macro and the micro. Macro basically look at things which are unrelated from the entrepreneur, outside of the entrepreneur's control. So things like environment, finance and capital, and displacement and so on. Whereas micro, it's very similar to macro and microeconomics. Macro look externally, micro looks internally into the individual or the entrepreneur itself. So when it comes to micro, we're looking at character or trait or opportunity available to the entrepreneur, or formulation when it comes to the entrepreneurs. So let's cover the macro view first. Within the macro view, there are three schools of thoughts. There's the environmental school of thought. We'll go through each one in a moment. There's the financial and capital school of thought, and there's the displacement school of thought. Displacement means the individual move to a different city or a different town. Like if you're from Nha Trang, you move to Ho Chi Minh City, you've been displaced. You're in a strange place itself. There are certain advantages which you will have when it comes to the displacement school of thought. And then there's the micro views. There are three. There's the trait and the characters school of thought, the entrepreneurial trait school of thought. There's the venture opportunity school of thought. And then there are the strategic formulation school of thought. So let's go through each one of these individually. So first is the macro, the environmental school of thought. Here, in general, the entrepreneurs consider the external factors around them that might affect in the entrepreneurial life. So they're looking at the environment, where they are, and how it potentially can affect them, and they formulate the business or the startup according to the environment around them. Yeah. So, for example, if you're in a village, the kind of businesses or the environment surrounds you gonna require a different thoughts when it comes to starting a business in the village. So maybe craft or service, but in terms of for small number of clients in the village or customers which happen to be in the village itself. Compare that to an environment where if you are in a city, such as Ho Chi Minh City, for example, the environment's going to be different, and you need to consider your external environment before you think of a business. Second school of thought when it comes to macro views is the financial capital school of thought. So this is more based on capital seeking process. You kind of seen on Zalo me posting quite a few events and conferences around Ho Chi Minh City, and there are capital available or competition which reward you in terms of prizes and so on. So there are entrepreneurs, instead of looking at environments or other factors, they are looking at what competition is available or what venture capital are looking for, and then designing the business around the capital or the finance itself. So if the, for example, if the International University have a competition on social entrepreneurships, and there are monetary prizes when it comes to winning these competitions on, you design your entrepreneur or your startup around social entrepreneurships so that you can win or be influenced by this finance and capital. Yeah, so this is slightly separate in the sense that you formulate your business around what is capital is available for. Yeah, so whatever capital is available for, you design your business to be able to gain that capital. Separate to the finance and capital school of thought is the displacement school of thought. Oops. Switch back. With the displacement school of thought, being alienated, being in a strange place, drive the entrepreneur itself. Being in a separate country, separate city, being in a strange place, you potentially because of things like political displacement or cultural displacement or even economic displacement. So some of you might come from another city in Vietnam due to low employment in other cities. So you are economically displaced. But in general, you'll be culturally displaced because in your hometown, home village, or wherever you come from, the culture there is going to be different from the culture in Ho Chi Minh City. Other potential are things like political displacement and so on as well. Being displaced is not necessarily a bad thing. When it comes to entrepreneur, being displaced can be a good thing. Yeah. So, for example, if you're from Nha Trang, you move to, say, Ho Chi Minh City, you culturally in Nha Trang, or economically in Nha Trang, or politically in Nha Trang, is going to be different from Ho Chi Minh City. But being displaced not necessarily is a bad thing. There are community in Ho Chi Minh City which come from Nha Trang and so on. There are plenty of very successful Nha Trang restaurant or businesses which to do with Nha Trang in Ho Chi Minh City. So it potentially can give you that advantage. You serve a slightly or a niche area in Ho Chi Minh City, and there are opportunity for you to do that, to bring the culture or other things which are unique from your region where you've been displaced from into the city or the country which you are being displaced to. So that's displacement school of thought. In terms of the financial and capital school of thought, let's have a look at this financial analysis, emphasis, and so on. It depends on which phase of the startup are you in. Are you a beginning stage startup? Or are you a small business, ongoing businesses, or are you your business is in the process of shutdown or decline, or you are approaching retirement, you want to pass on your business to someone else? So it depends on the different phases of the business. Different phases of the business require different kind of financial or capital. So start phase of any business, you need seed capital, investment to start the whole business in general, or venture capital sources. So decision which you tend to make. Let me see if I can change this. There's a title, there's a title here, and it's just difficult to see. Let me just change the color. Okay. So you have venture stage, you have financial consideration, you have decision. So in terms of startup, if you have enough capital, then you can seed. If you don't gain enough capital, then you can abandon the business. When it comes to small business, ongoing business in general, you are looking, when it comes to finance and capital consideration, you need to look at cash management. Do you have enough cash to maintain the business? Do you need more investment, or can you pay out your profit to investors? You do financial analysis and evaluation and decision when it comes to small businesses and ongoing businesses. Either maintain the business, increase in size or growth, or reduce the size of the business to make sure the cash is managed properly, that you're not overspending. When it comes to the ending stage, when it comes to businesses to do with finance and capital, the financial consideration you need to make are profitability, looking for companies to buy you out, or looking for somebody like your son or daughters or nephews and so on to take over your business once you retire or pass away. So the main decision you need to make here in terms of finance or business is sell your business if the price is right. If you can find a successor, you can always retire. If you cannot sell or retire by passing on your business, you can always close down the business itself by dissolving the operation itself. Let's look at the micro view. there are 3 microviews which we looked at earlier: the entrepreneur trait, the venture opportunity, as well as the third one, the formulation, strategic formulation school of thought. When it comes to trait, the entrepreneur trait school of thought, in general, tends to focus more on the entrepreneur itself, or him or herself. What kind of characters do they have? What kind of trait do they have? Do they have the right trait to be an entrepreneur? Like liking of risk, being like the single child or the eldest child in the family, being independent, being creative, need for achievement, being creative, being determination. Do you have necessary determination to push the business all the way through, as well as having the technical knowledge? Yeah. So if the entrepreneur have all the necessary traits to be a good entrepreneur, they can be an entrepreneur. Doesn't matter what kind of business it happens to be, as long as you have the trait itself. So that's the trait or the character school of thought. Separate to the trait is the venture opportunity school of thought. So here is relying more so on opportunity itself. So you focus on the opportunity aspect of the venture, the search for idea sources, the development of the concept, the implementation of the venture opportunity itself. Sometimes it's also known as the corridor principle. Basically looking for a corridor or a path to, or opportunity to enter. So it's kind of a new pathway or opportunity will arise that will lead you or lead the entrepreneur in a different direction. And it might actually end up in terms of being successful in that sense. So in general, I tend to talk a lot about the secret to be an entrepreneur or starter is to start something or to do something. That is very, very, very important. It's not about doing something and become successful at what you're doing. That's not necessarily always true. By doing something, whether you are successful or not successful, if you're successful, I mean your targets or your results is completed. But even if you're not successful, and if you try to do something, it will lead you to other things as well. Yeah, so if something's unsuccessful, it will lead you into a different path in a better direction overall. And you kind of see that with your clean tech assignment as well. The first few times you try, if you're successful, good, if you're successful. But if you're not successful, it will lead you to something else. You will try something else. And that will lead you to something else as well. So what is very important is you try, you start to do something. If you don't do something, if you like for example the clean tech assignment, if you don't do it, you don't try, you don't practice, when you play as a class and then you fail, that is your problem, yeah, by not doing something. But if you try to do something about it by trying and attempting the clean tech assignment, then you're going to gain a lot of experience. You're going to try whether you fail, you try a different pathway when it comes to play as a class. In general, you're going to be more fully rounded with all the necessary experience to handle the various different reaction or various different results when it comes to the entrepreneurship itself. Let's look at the trait, the school of the entrepreneurial trait school of thought. Trait depends on the person itself. What kind of character has the person? So here we're looking at the great person character, or the the classical entrepreneur, the psychological characteristic entrepreneur, or the management entrepreneur, leadership entrepreneur, or entrepreneurship entrepreneur. So these are the various different potential traits or character which you can have. And you can find out these kind of characters. Actually, there should be, let me just change the color of these title. So for a great person trait, you look for, or definition of a great person is an extraordinary achievers. You can measure these extraordinary achievers by looking at their principle, their history, as well as their experience. You can find them by asking what principle do you have, what are your achievements, and so on. You can find out these people. It's the same for the other traits as well. For the psychological characteristic trait, definition there, the founders or control over various different means of production. You measure them from the locus or their surrounding of how they control their surrounding. Locus, it just means an area around them, around a single point or around a single person. Tolerance of ambiguity, their needs for achievement and so on. You can ask them, but you can find out by asking them what are their values. They're going to say they want their tolerance to ambiguity, or they want control of their surrounding, or they have a need for achievement. So these are the kind of trait or measures you can measure of the entrepreneur itself. The classical entrepreneurs, or the classical trait, are people who do innovation. They're in risk and uncertainty. They're willing to take on some risk and calculated risk and calculated uncertainty. They're the so-called creative, the Schumpeterian creative destruction. You measure them through their decision-making ability to see opportunity where there are none, and their creativities and so on. You can find out by asking them what are the opportunity. They will always have some kind of opportunity because they will see opportunity where there are none. What are their vision? How do they respond to various different things? Their response, you can measure the response. You can measure creativity from their response. There's the management entrepreneur trait. The definition of management trait, they're the creative values through recognition of business opportunity, the management of risk taking, through the communication of management skill to mobilize whatever. Yeah, so just put a word here and put the same word here, and it should apply to anything, because management can be applied through anything. You can measure them by looking at their expertise, their technical knowledge, as well as their technical plan. You can find these people out in the management traits out by asking various different questions, like what are your plans? They will always have some kind of plan, and that's the point of management. What are their capabilities? Yeah, they will have technical capabilities. They will also have technical plans as well. By asking them their credential, you can always find out that they have technical skill sets or knowledge, as well as technically they're good at planning as well. And then there's the leadership traits of entrepreneurs. So these are the social architect. They're the promotion and protection of values and so on. So you measure them through their attitude, their style, as well as their management, the way they manage people. You can find out by asking them how they manage people, and they will tell you about their attitude and style and so on. So they're the leadership traits of management or of entrepreneurs. And then there's the intrapreneur. We'll cover intrapreneur later on. These are those which are who pull together to promote innovation within some kind of corporation. Entrepreneur just means corporate entrepreneur. It means that instead of starting a business for yourself, you're starting a business for a company. You can measure them by their decision making, and you find these people out by asking them how do they change or adapt within some kind of corporate environment. Yeah, so they will tell you from their answer, you can see it's mostly good decision making and so on. The last trait of thought, which a school of thought, which we discussing in terms of micro view, are the strategic formulation school of thought. With strategic formulation, it means that you plan things out. It's all about planning. It's about that business plan. You might not have opportunity or characters or the other school of thoughts. Here, whatever you can do, you can just sit down and plan it out. Yeah, so emphasize the planning process in a successful venture development. Yeah, so you write the business plan. So, or strategic business plan. So here, in terms of Ronstadt view, Ronstadt, the same guy which did the 6-dimensional culture and so on. Strategic formulation can be in various different area, which I have. You can leverage certain uniqueness which people have, or the entrepreneur have access to. The entrepreneur can have access to a unique market, sometimes known as the mountain gap strategy. When you actually identify major market segment. Yeah, so all this is within this so-called planning process. You can have the unique people in terms of unique elements. You have a unique person. It could be a good actor or actress, could be a good singer, or could be a good chef as well. So sometimes this is known as the great chef strategy. So it's a skill that someone has, a unique skill set which someone has, or special talent, whether it's a good chef or a good singer or a good actor, actress. The whole business or the whole business plan is built around that one specialist. Yeah, the so-called hacker in our holy trinity of hacker, hustler, and hipster. Yeah, so the chef is built around the one technical person, which could be an artist of some form, or it could be a chef of some form, or a singer of some form. Could be a good YouTube blogger of some form. The entire business will be built around that one person, or it could be a combination of person with that specific skill set. And then there's the unique product. It's built around some one or maybe a number of different widgets or products. So sometimes it's also known as the better widget strategy. So it's built around some kind of innovation that encompasses new or existing marketplace. Yeah, so nowadays there's a lot of artificial intelligence and apps and so on. A lot of these new innovation, and maybe come up with a new app which use the mobile ecosystem and so on. So some kind of better widget strategy. So it could be a unique product of some sort, some form. Or it could be resource as well, unique resource. They're sometimes known as the water well strategy. So his ability to gather or harness your special access to specific resources over long term. So only you have access to that particular resources, or only a few people have access to that resources. And from there, you strategize your business around that unique one resource. That's a strategic formulation. It's about planning, business plan around some kind of process. And the process can be surrounded a unique market or unique person or unique product or a unique resources. Okay, so that's the micro view school of thought, and that's the 6 different school of thoughts. Let's check the time. Okay, the time now, it's 2:18. Let's take it 2:20. We'll take a 15-minute break, but before we take the break, let me just give you the link to register your unique topic. Okay, so it's first come, first serve. You can click on the link to go straight to the spreadsheet itself, and onto the spreadsheet you can register your unique topic. Let's just have a look at this. And you see a few people logged in straight away. That's very fast, 1 or 2. Make sure you don't are not on someone else's color. Okay, click on the black square alone. If it's color, it means someone else is working on it. I can see pizza 4P, Apple. Don't register your name. You need topic here, not name. Code Academy, interesting. Amazon, Body Shop. Uni, probably Uniqlo here, isn't it? You see Vina Game. Abbott, is that a pharmaceutical company? Starbucks. Quite a few interesting topics here. There are 18 people in total. Okay, we'll take a 15-minute break. You can spend your time registering your topic. It is 2:20, so we'll come back to the lecture at 2:35. Okay, so 2:35 we will restart the lecture. Okay, check in. Can you hear me?
Yes, teacher.
Yes, teacher.
Okay, good. Let's get back to the lecture. You see, quite a lot of people registered already. Let's have a look at all of the different topics. Pizza 4P, Apple, Starbucks, Code Academy, Spotify, Amazon, but Innisfree, Body Shop, Vina Milk, Uniqlo, Vina Gain, Absolute Vodka. Absolute Vodka is not that famous among Vietnamese, yeah. So I advise you maybe change to the Scottish whiskey, which is more famous in Asia than vodka. Vodka are very little drunk in Vietnam. Whiskey is a little bit more famous. Intel, Muji, Samsung, Lush, maybe famous in Ho Chi Minh City, but not in other people from other city. Okay, so be careful of that. Coca-Cola, Coca, to be Coca-Cola. Netflix, Perfect Day, Pepsi, Sabago, Sabato, should be Sabago, isn't it? Is there such thing as a Sabato? PV Gas, Roman Mix, haven't heard of that one. Gucci, Nestle, Garena, I haven't heard of that one. Keel, don't know what that is. McDonald's, Unilever, Rolex, Shopee. Okay, interesting choices. I think this class is quite a big class. I think there's about 36 students in total. So maybe instead of choosing the top 10, we might do the top 15. Yeah, so up to about 15 students can present in the class. We'll take a vote on it. Yeah, maybe we'll do the voting next week to see which one will do the class presentation. So we'll choose next week. We'll choose up to 15 topics to do class presentation. Okay, we'll leave it for 1 week for you to fill in the topics, and then next week we will vote on which of the 15 topics which we'll present to the class. And those who get voted within that 15 will get an extra potential of an extra 10% bonus point for their individual assignment as well. Okay. Let's get back to the lecture. Let's switch screen. Okay, so before the break, we covered the 6 schools of thought. They are collectively classified as micro and macro view school of thoughts. We cover all 6, the environmental school of thought, the financial capital school of thought, displacement school of thought, the trait or character school of thought, the opportunity school of thought, as well as the strategic formulation school of thought. Dr. Win Mai also did a lot of research, this back in 2014. You're welcome to look for her publication. It should be published on various different journals in Vietnam as well as outside of Vietnam as well. Other research which she looked into, or other questionnaire which she looked into, is the environmental factors in Vietnam. So this kind of relates to the GME, the Global Entrepreneurship Monitors, of what are the various different factors affect the entrepreneurship environment in Vietnam. Yeah, so this will be slightly different to results which we saw. What we saw was the latest results, the survey in 2017, 2018. Third research was done or published at least in 2014, but the data collection probably happened about 1 or 2 years before that. So be careful that her results are slightly different from the latest results because the environment are constantly changing. So let's just remind us what's the Global Monitors results is. Yeah, let's just do this. Let's paste it here as well. One moment. Let me just move this around. For now, let's look at the monitor. Is this graph we're looking for? Copy. And we'll paste it here. So it's easier for us to reference the two of them side by side. So don't forget, this is the latest results. This is from 2018, 2017, 2018. This is way back in 2000, maybe 2012, 2011, 2012. Let me just resize this as well. So when we looked at the Global Monitor, the latest results of the survey, the strength in Vietnam is physical infrastructure, culture and social norm, and internal market dynamic. These were the strength. The weaknesses were finance, education when it comes to primary and secondary, and government programs. So back when Dr. Win Mai did her research, the weaknesses are infrastructure, which is untrue now. The physical infrastructure has changed. Technical capability, that still remain. R&D and so on are weak in the latest research. Intellectual capital and so on, that's to do with R&D and so on, are weak, yeah, which is true. So these has persisted as weaknesses. And things which are strength, things like quantity of firm and association, in this research didn't really cover that. Maybe everything is to do with internal market dynamic. Maybe we put it into here. Political system. Is there a political system? National policies, general policies. The GME did not really cover political systems. Encouraging policies, that would be to do with government programs, although the latest survey kind of said it is weak rather than strong. Opportunity to access, ... What could that be? I can't remember what that would be. I will update this and add it later. And also public administration systems as well. So that's to do with the internal market. Yes, so internal market dynamics. So what we kind of seen is from her research, at least 2011, 2012, a few of them still persist. but a few environmental factor has weakened since. Things like infrastructure. So technology, intellectual property is still weak, like the latest results. Things like encouraging policies and programs, that is also weak. But things which reinforce way back then and the latest research, things like association quantity of firms, also things like public administrative systems and economic rates and so on, which are still quite strong nowadays. The other research which Dr. Nguyen Mai also did is motives. In terms of what the motives in Vietnam which are strong, we can also compare this with the GEM. So her research way back in 2011, 2012, most likely, things like financial, family and friends and financial securities and so on are the big motives, which are also true with the GME as well. Need to achievement, that is true with the GME as well. Desire for knowledge. So these are the main motives why people in Vietnam start business. So some because of curiosity, others because of it is a higher income or better income, others because it's a social status and improvements of social status, because don't forget entrepreneurs are very well respected profession in Vietnam. Up to about 75% agree that it is a very respective career path, because it's not only it contribute to society in the form of job creation, but also being an entrepreneur is a difficult task itself. Not many people are entrepreneurs, so hence it's a very well respected job profession. It's other reason why start a business is best use of expertise, create jobs for friends and family and relatives, social status improvement, passionate, desire for knowledge, need for achievement. So the main sort of like reason why Vietnamese start a business, or the 70% or up to 75% down here, family security, financial security, needs to achieve, desire for knowledge, passionate, and social status improvement. Those are the main reason. A weaker reason is up here. So these because of less so because of a reason. Things like taking over the family's business, only 20%. Not a lot of people have family which are successful in business in a way, maybe because of lack of sample up here. Dissatisfaction with the current jobs, they're a very weak reason. Unemployment and needs a job, that's also another weak reason. Or recognize opportunity or find something challenging and so on. So these are weaker reasons. The strength, very similar to GME, the global monitor. So times hasn't really changed. Main reasons are down here, like family security, high income, passion, and social status improvements, and so on. In terms of motives and so on, what Nguyen Mai has found, so don't forget the latest results might differ from the GME, might differ, but from her research, she found that Vietnamese, in terms of reason why they start businesses or startups, is to recognize opportunity, to find challenge, desire to knowledge, social status, as well as family security. So these are these reasons make entrepreneur will go out their way and start a business. So these are high reason for people to do entrepreneur or startup. One of her research also found that in general, student lecturers and employees are very low in terms of motives. So these are reasons to be low. Or people, or students or lecturers and employees are very low, mainly because the reason for people to be a student, or reason for lecturers to be lecturers, or employees to be employees, are less so when it comes to these things. So students and lecturers are less in terms of focusing or interested in family financial securities, and they might have a desire for knowledge, but in general, challenging or recognizing opportunities and so on, they are weak at. Yeah, so for student lecturers and employees, reason down here or motives down here are much lower, yeah, than up here. So maybe a lot of the reason and motives are higher up, so hence they're less likely to be entrepreneurs. But it does not mean that they make bad entrepreneurs. Yeah, it just means they're less motivated to be entrepreneurs. Those are two very different things. Yeah, less motivated is one thing, and whether many students or many lecturers or many employees become entrepreneur or not are two separate things. It doesn't mean that they make bad entrepreneurs either. Yeah, so it's just that they don't try. Because, like I said, the secret to entrepreneurs or startups, yeah, is to start something. This group here, student lecturers and employees, are less likely to start something, or less likely to do something to do with startups. Whereas people up here, they're higher motivated to do something. Yeah, so they're more likely to be entrepreneur. Not necessarily a good entrepreneur, but more likely to try to be entrepreneur or start a startup. Yeah, whereas the group down here, not necessarily they're bad entrepreneurs. It just means that they're less motivated and less likely to start something or to do something to do with startups or entrepreneurships. So be careful of that. The two are not the same. Okay, let's move on. We'll move on to process and approach. We'll review the various different integrative approaches which are associated with entrepreneurships. We'll look at the integrative approach, the entrepreneurship assessment approach, and the multi-dimensional approach. Yeah, so these are three different approaches. We'll go through the practical, the real world, more practical approach later on, but at least we'll go through a lot of these textbook theory approach, at least so that we have material for the midterm exam, yeah, in terms of multiple choice and so on. So the first of the three approach, which we look into, is the integrative approach. With the integrative approach, it's built around the concept of some kind of input results in some kind of output. Yeah, so input, some value added process, and then an output on the other side. So built around concept of input to the entrepreneurial process. The process is the value added process, and an outcome or multiple outcomes comes from the entrepreneurial process, the so-called value added process. It focuses on, let's switch back. It focuses on the value added process or the entrepreneurial process itself, and it identifies 5 key elements that contribute to the process itself. The integrative approach provides a comprehensive picture regarding the nature of entrepreneurship that can be applied to not only at different levels, but to all sorts of business. There'll be some kind of inputs, and there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different kind of inputs, such as the environmental opportunity, the individual's character or entrepreneurial individuals itself, the team, the organization context, some kind of unique concept It doesn't have to be unique per se. It could be a business process or some kind of raw material, access to unique raw material. There's also resources, which are basically raw material as well. And then there is some kind of value-added process, and the output could be a ongoing venture or some kind of value creation product or service. Could be a new product or service, could be a new process, could be a kind of technology, intellectual properties, and so on. Could be a profit, could be for personal benefit, or could be some kind of employment asset or revenue generating growth, and so on. The value-added process basically consists of two separate processes. There's the entrepreneurial process, which identify the opportunity, as well as assessing and acquire necessary resources and the implementation. So together, this entrepreneurial process will add value to the inputs. The value can be measured through the entrepreneurial intensity. So these will measure how much value added into the output itself. So the number of events and degree of entrepreneurships, how much innovation is added, how much value is added through the risk-taking, as well as being proactiveness and so on to produce these outputs. So that's the integrative approach to entrepreneurship. Separate to that is the entrepreneurial assessment approach, which focus or emphasize more on the assessment or measuring of some kind of basically it's just this so-called entrepreneurial intensity measures. Yeah, more focus is put onto the measurement side of things. So it's stressed on assessment, qualitative as well as quantitative, and strategic as well as ethically in regards to the whole process, entrepreneurial process itself, as well as the venture and the environment. So with the assessment approach, focus more on the assessment itself. So very similar to the integrative approach, there'll be inputs and there'll be outputs. The inputs, type of entrepreneur, type of venture, type of environment. So very similar to the integrative approach. There'll be some value added, and the value added can be measured or it can be assessed. The assessment can be of the value added can be qualitative, quantitative, strategic, as well as ethical. So once you measure the value added process itself, do the results of the assessment make sense, given that early stage or mid stage or late stage when it comes to the entrepreneur itself. So you can measure if you are a early stage startups, you can assess it from quantitative, qualitative, quantitative, strategic, as well as ethical, because each stage will have a different focuses. It's very similar to what we talked about, the difference between small business and startups. There are slight difference. The two are very similar, but there are slight differences in the metric, in measurement, whether it's qualitative, quantitative, and so on. So by measuring, and if you're in early stage, you need to try to fit into that early stage process, or mid stage, or small business, or late stage, or businesses which are in mature, much more mature kind of situation. So that's the assessment approach. And more complex, more complicated is the multi-dimensional approach, where you measure everything all at once. So in general, it's a lot harder to implement the multi-dimensional approach. It views the entrepreneurship as a very complicated matrix or multi-dimensional framework that emphasize not only the individual, but also the environment and the organization, as well as the venture process. So with the multi-dimensional approach, we look at everything at once. It's a lot more complicated to do. Yeah, so you have the environment, the individual, the organization, as well as the process. So in terms of environment, you look at the capital availability, presence of experience of entrepreneurs, technical skills, and so on and so on. You cover quite a lot of different components. That's why it's called multidimensional. In terms of individual, you need to focus on measuring the needs to achieve, locus of control, risk-taking propensity, job satisfactions, entrepreneurial parents' age, friends, education, and work experience, and so on, when it comes to individual. When it comes to organization, you need to measure the overall cost of leaderships, differentiation, what is the organization focusing on, new products or services, parallel competition, franchise entries, and so on. Yeah, the list is quite long. Similarly, process, you need to focus on locating a business application, accumulating the necessary resources for the business, marketing, products as well as service, producing the products, building the organization, respond to government and society, and so on. So a lot more complicated, a lot more input, a lot more things which are measured and needs to be followed. So it's in general, not a lot of business in general follow the multi-dimensional approach because it's so complicated to manage, especially when it comes to startup. Startup, you start from somewhere. You usually consist of 1 or 2 employees. You don't have all the necessary resources to implement all this unless you start something big with lots of capital and so on. But in general, most startups are 1 or 2 people at the beginning stage and so on. And you don't have all the necessary luxury as well as resources to implement multi-dimensional approach. Okay, let's move on. We'll move on to talk about entrepreneur. What is entrepreneur? Entrepreneur is a corporate entrepreneur. It's like startups, yeah. But startup, you start a startup not for yourself, but for another company. So entrepreneur is also known as corporate entrepreneur. It's a process that facilitates firms' effort to innovate constantly, as well as cope with the effective competition to realities and so on. It's the world's economy are changing as new technology comes in. We have the internet. Nowadays we have mobile phones or smartphones. And in the immediate future, we will have artificial intelligence, as well as quantum computers and newer technology coming online every day. Now we have drones and mobile commerce and robots and so on. So the global economies are constantly changing. So hence, companies or institutions has to change with the environment, with the economy. Hence, company needs to adapt, needs to re-innovate themselves to be able to fit in with the new economy or the changing economy. So firm and enterprise need to re-examine their purposes as well as their strategy, not only to satisfy their multiple stakeholders, but also to respond to rapid as well as discontinuous significant changes in their operation. Because constantly the environment are changing nowadays, especially recently we had COVID, so pandemic, lockdowns, and so on. Companies need to be restructured in such a way. Maybe more people work online, especially at university, more online classes and so on. So as the global economy or the environment change, corporation needs to change with that as well. You know, if they don't change, they may have to shut down or close their operation. So in general, up to a quarter of all new businesses or new startups come about through these so-called corporate entrepreneurships. It just means that a entrepreneur which works in a company. So for example, good example, maybe let's take Vietnam Group, for example. Yeah, Vietnam Group, biggest company in Vietnam, constantly changing and adapting. They launch Vin Home, Vin Education, the Vin Medicine Hospital, and so on, and also manufacturing of cars and vehicles and so on. Yeah, so recently they sold off their Vin School and Vin Health, and basically open up other form of businesses as well. So in general, each one of these new businesses which Vin Group set up, they need managers or entrepreneurs to help them start these new companies for them, or new sectors for them as well. So that's what corporate entrepreneur or entrepreneurship is all about. Is that instead of starting a company for yourself, you start companies for other companies. And the main difference is that the parent companies like Vietnam Group, for example, can contribute a lot of resources to help you to start your business. Whereas if you work on your own, the amount of resource you get probably a lot less. Yeah? The resource which you have access as a entrepreneur will be your friends and your family. Yeah. But if you are an entrepreneur, you have access to the parent company's resource as well, such as Vietnam Group, for example. So in general, different culture, different country has different mix when it comes to entrepreneurships. So China has quite a large percentage of businesses which are entrepreneur, same as the US, and countries such as Japan and Hong Kong in general tend to focus a lot more when it comes to entrepreneur rather than entrepreneur. So these are high in entrepreneur instead of entrepreneur, whereas country up here are more focused on entrepreneur. Quite a substantial portion of the of that so-called 25%. Here we talk about 25%, but it comes from country to country. Some country more so, some country less so. So Japan less so, China, US more so. So the nature of entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship. So intrapreneurship is entrepreneurial behavior within large companies and organizations, mainly to adapt to new environment, new sectors, new opportunities, and so on. Also known as corporate entrepreneurships, also known as corporate revolution. Intrapreneur or corporate entrepreneurships is a formal or informal activities to help companies create new companies within or new child company within their group, or new businesses in established companies themselves in a parent group. Could be through a product, a new product, or a new more innovative business process, or through new access to new market through market development, such as Vietnam Group, for example. access into vehicle manufacturing and health and medicine and so on, and education and so on as well. In general, there are 4 kinds of entrepreneurship. There's the sustainable regeneration. There's the organization rejuvenation, strategic renewal, as well as domain redefinition to help with the parent company itself. So when we talk about sustained regeneration, organization rejuvenation, renewal, and domain redefinition and so on, here we are basically referring to the parent company, how the parent companies sustain themselves or rejuvenate themselves or renew themselves or redefine themselves. So this reference here are not to do with the startup. It's to do with the parents. Why or what's the motivation for companies to have entrepreneurship is to regenerate themselves or rejuvenate themselves or renew themselves or to redefine themselves. So when we talk about sustainable regeneration, it means that creating a stream of new companies or new products or new innovation in the existing product. So say, example would be maybe even Vinner Group, for example. Although they start off as packet noodle, but their main business is in real estate. But they need to redefine themselves as the real estate market changes, as people or the environment change. They need to come out with new streams of new products or new innovation, in addition to their normal existing product itself of producing homes and so on. So hence, by producing education, as in Vinner Education and Vinner Health and so on, it helps with their real estate business. Every real estate projects in general, you need to be able to attract people or home buyers to your home. By having good education and medical facilities and so on, your real estate become more attractive overall. So sustainable regeneration, by producing these new products such as education and health, it helps with real estates and so on as well. So that's an example of sustainable regeneration. Separate to that is organization rejuvenation, mainly focus on the parent firm's internal process and procedures, figure out how to improve or increase the value of the production chain. So for organization rejuvenation, you can do an up chaining or down chaining. So for example, Vinner Group, if we take their main business, such as say real estate, for example, we can go up the value chain or the production chain, such as into building materials and so on as well. So instead of not only focusing on real estates and constructions of real estates, but you can go up the chain by also manufacture the raw material, which is basically construction material, such as cement and steel, and not only that, the furnitures and so on for their buildings. But you can also go down the production chain as well, in terms of not only constructing homes and so on, you construct the schools and hospitals and further down the supply chain or the production chain itself. And in terms of actually not only producing the real estates, but using or a user of the real estate, such as schools and hospital, for example. So that's an example of organization rejuvenation. So instead of focus on the internal process itself, you increase the value from the up chaining or down chaining the production chain. Separate to regeneration and rejuvenation, we also have strategic renewal as well. So these are the parent companies setting up entrepreneurs or new businesses to seek change in how it's aligned with the external environment. So as the environment changes, you need to be able to adapt to new changes. So nowadays, especially in the real estate. So here we'll take the example of Vietnam Group again, with their main business in real estate. Nowadays, the environment are changing and become smarter and smarter. So hence, now there is a focus on smart cities. So not only producing home and selling homes, but producing smarter, more environmentally friendly homes as well. So the strategic renewal could be designing and implementing all these smart sensors and so on to implement smart home strategy. So here, seeking to change how it competes and align better with the external environment, which could be improvement in terms of smart and automation and industry 4.0 and so on and so on. So that's strategic renewal. But separate to that, parent companies can always redefine their business as well. And Vietnam Group is a very good example of that. So instead of being a real estate company or even a packet noodle company, initially they have redefined themselves into other sectors and domain as well. So from real estate into school and health and medicine, and now into manufacturing of not only motorbikes, but also cars and electric vehicles and so on as well. They are moving into staking out new market and new business in new sectors, such as vehicles, motor vehicles, and so on as well, with Vietnam. So in general, here we tend to focus more on the parent company, but intrapreneur itself, there are two phases to the intrapreneur. There's the parent, and there are the child companies themselves, the entrepreneur of the intrapreneur. At least in this slide, we tend to focus more on the parent companies, the motives or motivation why corporation try to set up a startup among the corporation itself. Let's check the time. We have 10 minutes. Maybe another 10 minutes. I think we can cover these next two slides in 10 minutes. Yeah. Okay, so the issue with entrepreneurship is you're going to have problems, many problems, because there will definitely be conflict of interest. There will be conflict of interest between the parent company, say Vietnam Group, and the startup or the child company. Big companies and small companies are different. Their focus will be different. You cannot operate a small company using rules and regulation and innovation of big companies, and vice versa. You cannot do the vice versa. You cannot use startups and mentality of startups and new companies or small companies and use those kind of technology or management or business process within big companies. So there'll be a conflict of interest between the parent companies and the child company, because they are two separate or different, very, very different companies in total. So before starting entrepreneur, or in other words, starting a company for a parent companies, you need to be able to face the obstacle which exists between the parent and the child company. Yeah, that would be very strong, powerful obstacle between the way. Things like obstacles such as enforcing standard and procedures to avoid mistakes. Yeah, the problem with big companies enforcing their standard, for example, the Vietnam Group standard, as well as procedures and so on, there'll be bad effect on the child companies. Things like innovation solutions, as well as fund being misspent, yeah, especially new innovation. So let's take the example of Vietnam Group here and Vinstar with the electric vehicle company. There'll be because this is real estate and this is electric vehicles or environmental or high-tech kind of industry itself. So the two companies, the parent companies and the child companies, effectively needs different kind of standard, as well as finance and capital will need to be spent on more so on R&D when it comes to technology companies, whereas the real estate is going to be funds going to need to be processed in marketing and sales more so. Yeah, so there will be an adverse effect because the two are very, very different. In general, to fix these kind of issues or the differences in terms of interest, you need to be able to make ground rules specific to each situation, technology company situation, and traditional parent companies industry situation. Other conflict of interest, also managing resources for efficiency and return on investment. Yeah, so these are more to do with traditional company mentality. Yeah, for example, Vin Group, for example, real estate is all about profitability or return on investment or about efficiency. You would take a good example like Shopee or Grab or I don't know, Tiki and so on. These new industries such as e-commerce and ride sharing, they are loss-making companies. For them, it's not about return on investment. It's not about efficiency. It's not profitability. It's about market segment or market share. They are trying to grow as fast or as big as possible, even at a loss. So a lot of these e-commerce companies such as Tiki and Shopee are loss-making companies. Grab is still loss-making. They are not profitable. Any profit are used to subsidize the fees themselves as well. For them, it's not about profitability. It's about gaining market shares, trying to be as large and as big as fast as possible. Once they become fast and big, once they become like the parent companies, then they can worry about return on investment or efficiency or profitability. But for a lot of new technology companies such as e-commerce and ride sharing, it's about market shares, which is a lot more important to them. So if they implement ideas and management ideas and so on from the parent companies, they're going to fail. You know, ride sharing and the e-commerce businesses going to fail. Yeah. So hence, they need to focus on what is the critical issue. Yeah. Real estate's critical issue is going to be different from e-commerce or ride sharing critical issues. Yeah. Especially with the e-commerce and so on, it's about market share, which is first. Yeah, it's not about profitability or return on investment initially, at least. So hence, there'll be conflict of interest, and you need to be able to differentiate between the parent companies and the child companies, and they need to operate at different rules and regulation and standard and so on. Other conflict of interest are control against plan. For a parent companies, In other words, a company which has been operated for tens of years, for them having a 5-year plan is very good. Most big companies always have a 5 or maybe even a 10-year plan, how to do the business in the next 10 years. But the problems with startups, they might not even survive past their first year. So hence there is a conflict of interest or a difference there. For startups, in general, a 1-year plan is more than good enough. Why plan for 5 years when you might not even survive your first year in business itself? So in general, if you obey by the parent companies, control against plan and so on, the facts will be ignored. That should be replaced. Assumptions and so on. So you need to be able to change plan to reflect new learning, and that's what startups is all about. A 1-year plan, constantly changing. You cannot have a 5-year plan and then forced to stick to a 5-year plan. You might not even survive 5 years or even past your first year. But not only that, startups are still constantly changing and adapting and improving and so on. So you need to be able to change the plan as you go along. So the two are very different. The child companies and the parent companies are very, very different. Same with planning for the long term. A parent companies or established company can plan for a long term. A long-term plan is good for a established company. But for a startup, which might not even survive past their first year, a long-term plan might be a bad thing. So non-viable goals are locked in. As the market changes, as you adapt, you're locked into have to do certain things. So hence, high failure costs. So to prevent that kind of situation, you need to have or envision a goal and allow the startups or the parent companies allow the child companies to be able to set interim milestones and recess the plan or the so-called long-term plan at each of these milestones and allow them to be able to change the plan as they go along. And that's what the point of a difference between a startup and an established business is all about. It's all about managing functionality as well. In general, entrepreneurs tend to have a high failure rate. So entrepreneurs will fail, and ventures will fail as well. Yeah, so that is without saying. Whereas established companies, they already established. Of course, they have not failed. Otherwise, they would not be an established company. Whereas entrepreneurs, the thing is that you try, you fail, you learn from your mistakes and your experience, then you try again. It will get better and better until you hit on something. And that's what clean tech assignment is all about as well. So hence that there needs to be infrastructure and standard and so on to support this, the higher risk startups and so on as well. So you need to be able to support entrepreneur with managerial as well as multi-discipline skill sets. In addition, there will be more other conflict of interest as well. The list is long. Yeah, so here, same thing. It's a continuous long process for conflict of interest between the parent companies and the child company. So parent might avoid move that risk the base business. Yeah, so if it's a bank, it'd be banking business. If it's a startup, could be fintech, e-payment. If the e-payment start to erode businesses from the banking business, the parent might close down the child because it's endangering the parent's business, for example. So parents will have the possibility of closing down the child business if it endangers their base business. That will create missed opportunity with e-payment, for example. And in general, the recommendation is to make things happen is to take small steps and build from strength. That's why in general you tend to see the fintechs and so on tends to come from technology companies more so and less so from the banking business or banks in general, because fintech or the banking business has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. It is ripe for to be changed into a more efficient electronic or internet kind of businesses and so on. Protection or protect the base business at all costs. Here, very similar situation here. Instead of eroding business, if it endanger the old business. I mean, we talked about Schumpeterian creative destruction. Yeah, if you're creating something new with the startups, it will destroy or has the potential to destroy something old, which is the older business. So hence, a lot of parents companies will shut down startups if it has the potential to destroy the old business itself. So the adverse effect here, especially with startups and so on, is the potential that the parent companies will dump them, will close them down when the base business is threatened. So to be able to work together between the startups and the parent companies, you need to make venturing the mainstream, and take on affordable risks. If it's bank and mobile payments and blockchaining and so on, there is a threat that it might close down the banking business when blockchaining and e-commerce has all the potential to replace the so-called creative destruction and destroy the old business itself. But you need to be able to work together. You need to be able to make the change the mainstream as well. If it's inevitable that the new technology will replace the old technology, then why fight against it? Make venturing mainstream it and maybe transit into the new technology rather than kill off the new technology to protect the old technology. Another potential problems is judging new step by prior experience. So here's another good, banking business is another good example. Banking business has been around for 300 years. So the technology is 300 years old. It's been invented back in the 1800s or maybe even the 1700s. Nowadays we have smartphones, internet, artificial intelligence, and so on. So banking business, 300 years old businesses, potentially use those rules and regulation of a banking business, you're gonna make wrong decision when it comes to the newer market, the internet and the mobile payment and quite a lot of the other new innovation which happened this past few years. Wrong decision about the competition and the market will happen. So use new learning, new innovation, new strategy, as well as test old assumptions. So older parent business gonna have a lot of these old assumptions and older technology. Parents and startups or child companies going to be very, very different. So you need to be able to compensate uniformly. Else you're going to have low motivation when it comes to the child company. If you compensate the child company a lower price or lower salary compared to the old business, then why would anyone work for you? So low motivation will happen if you do that, and inefficient operation will occur. So you need to be able to balance the risk and reward. If a child company is taking more risks and so on, for them, that is, they need to be compensated more compared to those which take lesser risks. So employs special compensation to reflect the amount of risk which the child companies are taking on. Compare that to the parent company. Other differences are to be able to promote compatibility or compatible individuals. If you don't allow promotion of child companies or even a path for them to improve their career, there will be a loss of motivation. But not only that, you're going to lose innovators and so on as well. They're going to go off and start the companies by themselves or join other companies. Parents, of course, they have different standard, different rules, regulations, and so on. Compare that to the child companies. But if you promote incompatible individuals and so on, when it comes to the child companies itself, you're going to lose a lot of your entrepreneurs or your innovators. So you should be able to accommodate the so-called doers and the boat rockers and so on. They might be difficult to work with, but don't forget, parent companies and child companies are different. If you promote people which are the same as the parent companies, you're going to lose out on child companies or the innovators and the entrepreneurs or the intrapreneurs overall. Okay, let's check the time. Okay, we're approaching 4 o'clock. I think we'll finish today for now and move on to these other materials next week. Yeah. Okay, so before we finish, just a few other things. Those who have not registered their individual assignment topics, please try and do so in this upcoming week. I think the city, Ho Chi Minh City, is about to open up again. I don't know if online class will become offline class next week. I will try to keep you updated through Blackboard, and I will try to pass on any information from the school once I hear them. Try to fill in the individual assignment. We will vote next week which topic we'll present to the class. You can change your topics as time goes by, but every topic needs to be unique. Yeah. So next week we will vote for the 50 most interesting topics. Not 50, but 15. And the 15 topics will be able to present. Yeah, those who present, who choose to present, will get automatic 5% bonus point, and then the class will give you the other potential up to a maximum of 5% extra. Depends on quality of the presentation. From my experience in the past, there will be a few which choose not to present. If you choose not to present, even if you're voted within the top 15, you will get 0% bonus points. Okay, any question from anyone? Any question on the other assignments as well? Like clean tech, EBISA? No? Okay, if there is no question.
Yes, I have the last question that is there the individual report, the limitation of work?
In terms of the individual assignment, you will get 10-minute presentation. So the report can be PowerPoint presentation, or it can be a Word document. It does not matter. So hence, try to write as much as if you're going to give a presentation, a 10-minute presentation. So 10-minute presentation, 5-10 minutes question and answer. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and
Okay,
if I cannot stay in the top 15 people voted, so I do not need to make a presentation and report too.
Exactly. You can do the same, but it's not to do the presentation. We don't have time in the class to do all 40 presentation. That would just take all weeks. Yeah. So even if you're not doing a presentation, if you just do a PowerPoint presentation of, say, 10 slides, which is around like 10 minutes or so, that is more than adequate for the individual assignment.
Yes, okay, thank you, teacher.
Any other question from anyone else? Okay, if there's no more question, I will see you next week.